good morning, and welcome to our stream today. It's fantastic to have you aboard. We have so much fun stuff to go ahead and go over. We have a brand new era of From the Ashes just behind us, yet another week of just a really wonderful comic book to go ahead and complement the adjective list X-Men #1. My name is Arakko Braddock. I want to welcome everybody over to the stream today. We had a fantastic last week over on the channel with comic books like Phoenix #1 and Ultimate X-Men issue 5. We posted two, I just think, really fantastic video reviews covering both of those books. I thought it was pretty interesting to see Jean Grey return over to the Marvel Universe in light of this new publishing over for the X-Men. Also, we had writer Stephanie Phillips providing the script over for this issue. So I thought it was pretty interesting to see somebody so far outside of the usual scope of talent to approach one of these upcoming X-Men comics. Plus, we also just got a really epic storyline in that issue, as so many like cursory characters throughout Marvel's intergalactic universe were reintroduced. It was cool seeing some old comic book villains like Parakis join the fray. And also, I thought it was super interesting to see elements of the Starjammers and Cyclops start to leak back into that narrative. Plus, I think Stephanie Phillips did a really good job accommodating some of the continuity over with Jed McKay as well as Marvel's editorial to make sure that the relationship between Jean and Scott stayed intact throughout that comic book tale. It's interesting because currently these two characters have sort of a long distance relationship where Scott is heading up the factory over in Alaska while Jean Grey is manning the intergalactic threats across outer space. Plus, Jean was able to fight the Universal Church of Truth and seemingly has a brand new foe that was introduced known as Adani. So really encourage you to check out our full video review over for that comic book. I think it turned out incredibly well. One of the only things we haven't touched on is just the amazing artwork from Alessandro Miraclo. I think the way he was able to capture just so many instances of Jean kind of bursting as the Phoenix with so much awesome power was really cool to see. There was a fantastic comment in my Phoenix video review also about somebody commenting about how much Jean is using her power in this new issue as well, which is totally a great call out and a really interesting new way that From the Ashes is positioning the character of Jean Grey to make her as interesting as humanly possible. In the next 50 seconds, I also want to sneak in a very quick blurb about Ultimate X-Men Chapter 5. Man, for me, this comic book is really amazing. I feel like the tone that it has across so many other, even X-Men comic books, is totally distinctive, totally unique. So much of what's helping the narrative in Ultimate X-Men is none other than Peach Momoko herself. Momoko is both writing and drawing this storyline that has some additional help with people like Zach Davison who are adapting some of the scripting. But I just thought that the character of Surge Noriko Ishida had such an interesting role to play in Ultimate X-Men and really showed just how diverse this narrative is and how many postmodern narrative techniques Peach Momoko is implementing towards this brand new element of X-Men. Without further ado here, it's time to go ahead and start our stream over in earnest. My name is Arakko Braddock, and right now we are in an incredibly special moment in comic books. Not only is the entire X-Men line relaunching with the From the Ashes era, but we also have San Diego Comic-Con just on the horizon here. There's so much to go over today. Elsewhere, we are also just doing so much massive hyping towards the next From the Ashes comic book of next week, which is actually going to be NYX. So we have an exclusive preview for NYX that we're going to get into in just a moment. Plus, we even have some brand new interiors on the second issue of Phoenix. So, man, there's so much to cover today. Also, I want to talk about the next week following NYX. We're also going to be getting the next issue of Amazing Spider-Man, and we're going to be getting X-Force. For me, X-Force is really, really exciting, even among the other From the Ashes comic books, because we have Betsy Braddock and Escani continuing their relationship from that epic Krakoan comic books that really house so much of their relationship. And if that wasn't interesting enough, we're also getting characters like Forge, who played such an interesting role among some of the other X-Men characters. Plus, we're also getting Surge in yet another comic book. So, Ultimate X-Men and X-Force is going to have an interesting connective tissue with the character of Noriko Ishida that I'm super excited to see play out as we get deeper into this publishing line. Okay, we have a lot to cover. Why don't we go ahead and jump right into it today with a full preview of our very next From the Ashes comic book? That's right, the upcoming From the Ashes title is NYX Issue 1. This series is written over from Jackson Lansing and Colin Kelly. We've had a lot of experience with their writing across recent Marvel comics. I think they actually did a really solid job with the most recent Captain America storyline. And also, their artist for that storyline, Carmen Carnero, is also headed on to another X-Men comic book with Exceptional X-Men. So Marvel is really busy taking some of the more mainstream creators and putting them over on X-Men titles, which I think is also just a super interesting piece of commentary to levy towards these brand new X-Men titles. Let's go ahead and talk about the cast of this new comic book. We have characters like Wolverine as Laura Kinney. We also have Miss Marvel, Sophie Cuckoo, and Anole. So very interesting cast. I think this Sarah Pichelli cover is really beautiful and presents these characters in their most modern costumes in really, really fascinating ways. I particularly think the way that Pichelli has been able to implement the new look over for Wolverine is super interesting here. All right, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the solicit for this issue and see how Marvel is choosing to market this brand new era of NYX. Also, just quick note here, this is not the first NYX comic book featuring Wolverine either. Marvel Comics is continuing to this team and this premise over with a brand new story. So let's check out what they're bringing to the new era of NYX. This is NYX. This isn't a book about X-Men. This is a book about mutants living past the end of their world and into a new beginning. This is Miss Marvel embracing her mutant life in the neon streets of the Lower East Side. This is Anole trying to keep his head above water. This is Wolverine in the shadows of Bushwick, protecting her own. This is Prodigy writing history as it happens, and Sophie Cuckoo finding her own way. The news reports are bleak, the streets feel dangerous, there's something lurking underground. Evil coming in from every direction, but they're determined to make it. This is Mutant Community, Mutant Pride, NYX. Let's quickly shout out the artistic talents on NYX1. We have Francesco Mortarino and Raul Angulo. I checked out a little bit of Francesco Mortarino's, backstory over at Marvel Comics and what comics he's recently contributed towards. I do see that he also illustrated some interiors on the recent Avengers issues, which have been really solid, actually. Okay, so here is our credits page over on NYX. I'm really loving the cohesive visual design that Jay Bowen is bringing to so many of these recap pages. One thing that I wish more DC Comics would honestly have is all these character portraits here, which are actually detailed by the artist of this individual issue on the right corner of the page. Also, once again, the logo design here and the way it's implemented with the X-Men logo is just a joy to read over on the page. Mutants are genetically gifted individuals with extraordinary abilities, which makes them targets of humanity's suspicion and violence. After an exodus from the nation of Krakoa, many young mutants have come to New York City, where they live in hope or safety or freedom of a better future, and sometimes of just surviving the day. But they're determined to make it. This is Mutant Community, Mutant Pride, NYX. So that's kind of similar to the solicit. It looks like Marvel is trying to really position these NYX characters as more urban, vigilante type heroes, really trying to protect the streets of, New York City and this more Brooklyn area where they're currently operating out of. Also, one thing I want to say about the entire X-Men line right now that I think is super compelling is the fact that the From the Ashes tagline actually seems to refer to Krakoa, We've seen again and again elements of Krakoa realized in some fashion or another, whether it be in Phoenix's backstory or in Cyclops's selection of some of the mutants he's assembled over in his X-Men series. Plus, NYX is also set to introduce a mystery of the Krakoan that we'll preview as well a little bit later on in our stream. So right now, Marvel Comics is setting up so much interesting Krakoa hunts for these future From the Ashes series. Let's see what NYX is currently bringing aboard here. So right from the gate, I think we get some beautiful Francesco Mortarino art that shows just how expressive he is as an artist. And of course, his style just accommodates Kamala Khan incredibly well throughout the narrative here. I'm really liking the way he's able to exaggerate Kamala's limbs in some really interesting ways that capture my imagination. Plus, we have great page designs here with interesting panel bleeds and panels that are shaped in just these interesting rectangular fashions that also capture just so much of my interest here. Plus, these elements of Spider Man, like the button on Kamala's backpack, do a wonderful job echoing the fact that this is still firmly implanted within the Marvel Universe. Right there, we're getting a reference from Kamala Khan that she is a legit lived on Krakoa and did the whole thing. Miss Marvel is currently in X-Men, is realized directly through the X-Men's most recent Hellfire Gala. Also, Miss Marvel is headed back over to Empire State University, which serves as the linchpin and plot for this brand new NYX scenario for the mutants as well. On the next page, we also get a clue that Miss Marvel is speaking to the character of Bruno on the phone, who's had so much of a backstory with this character across so many recent comic book stories, dating back to some of her first appearances over with G. Willow Wilson. It's great to see so much of Kamala's continuity referenced in the comic book. I think this is just a great indication that the creative team takes this really seriously. Also, once again, we get a great layout here from Francesco Mortarino that's really focused on just illustrating some of the individual pieces of motion on the page here too. Finally, I think this next page really kind of dives up some of the plot and introduces another element of our cast with Sophie Cuckoo. Watching the relationship start to develop here between Kamala and Sophie is a really interesting and just unexpected way for Marvel to flesh out this new era of NYX. Once again here, Francesco Mortarino carries a super fascinating page layout with so many disparate panels here scattered all over the page. Plus, readers can get a sense of Sophie's telekinetic abilities here with the purple hues on some of the disparate items. There's a lot of characterization that happens on this next page as Sophie tries to become fast friends over with Kamala. Really right now, Sophie is trying to find anybody she can to indicate to the rest of Empire State University that these two characters are socialites instead of losers and characters who have little to no connections to other outside characters from the X-Men. So I'd say across the board here, we have a really stunning and vibrant art, fascinating character relationships, and a great dynamic over for NYX. It's hard for me to be anything but positive about this new series. One of the things I really want to push to the forefront of Marvel's continuity is for them to take really interesting characters and take them super seriously. I feel like the cast that we've assembled on NYX is so solid, not only with some of the major players like Kamala, Laura Kinney, and Sophie Cuckoo, but also Prodigy and Anole are two really fascinating X-Men that I'm really happy to see boosted into the limelight here. There's a lot to be excited for NYX. Welcome to the stream, Jason. Good to have you aboard here. Okay, we're going to keep the exciting news announcements coming. DC Comics actually had a massive new news announcements with tons of brand new creative teams. Give me just a moment here. We're going to pull up some of these brand new comic book tales. This is also coming in from Adventures in Poor Taste. DC Comics is revealing new creative teams for Detective Comics, Green Arrow, and more. Now, this is massive because writer Ram V has been working with Detective Comics for a considerable amount of time. Joshua Williamson has been working with the Green Arrow property for a very long instance here. So it feels like DC Comics is really shuffling the boards and preparing a brand new direction here for the line. This one was published here 2 days ago on July 18th from David Brooke at Adventures in Poor Taste. DC Comics has revealed all their absolute launch titles today, but that doesn't mean the core series aren't important. Below you'll find story details and creative teams below for titles coming out in October of 2024. Okay, let's take a look at the brand new era of Batman here. It looks like Batman is still continuing here with Chip Zdarsky, Jorge Jimenez, and Carmine Di Giandomenico. This is issues 153 and 154, previewing a brand new storyline called The Dying City. So it looks like this tale features an unexpected return of the Riddler, a mysterious new superhero named Commander Starr, and the shocking murder of one of Gotham's greatest citizens. Looks like also Batman is going to be shipping twice monthly in October. I really think Chip Zdarsky has done excellent things on his run over on Batman, which was also really exciting for me because I feel like there's been so much of a quality increase stemming from Daredevil over to Batman at DC Comics. From what I read over with the character of Failsafe, it really felt like DC was positioning Batman as a science fiction character, which once again, as we've seen with creators like Al Ewing tackling Venom, is the direction that I want Marvel or DC Comics to move in over with the Batman property. So really great stuff so far on Batman with Chip Zdarsky, and I'm happy to see that DC Comics is working with this creative team in the long haul, even in the wake of a brand new relaunch at the publisher. Okay, next up though, we're getting a brand new era of Detective Comics. This is issue 1090, and also this is following the wake of Ram V's just tremendous work on the last era of Detective Comics. Following Gotham Nocturne, another of DC's most historical titles gets a new creative team in the form of superstars Tom Taylor and Mikel Janin. A new story arc titled Mercy of the Father set years after the tragic murder of Thomas and Martha Wayne. A ghost from Gotham City's past has been lying in wait to strike at Batman since that fateful night in Crime Alley. The story will result in major changes for the Dark Knight, and things may never be the same again. I was so mystified by the macabre setting set up in the last era of Detective Comics with Gotham Nocturne. For me, it's such a shock to see DC refreshing the creative team on Detective so soon, but the fact that they're following up with Ram V and such tremendous artists with Tom Taylor and Mikel Janin already has me interested in checking out what they're going to bring to the new era of Batman. One thing I will say, in just reading the solicit, is this does sound a little bit redundant, so I'm hoping we're going to get a big brand new shakeup here and just something unexpected for this new era of Detective Comics. Okay, we're also getting a brand new era of Action Comics. Man, I wish the Philip Kennedy Johnson era lasted longer on Action Comics. I love so much of what he was doing. This is 1070. Really liking this Clayton Henry cover here. Another one of DC's foundational titles goes weekly. Yikes. Okay, Action is going weekly over in October. Death of the Phantom Zone spins directly out of Absolute Power and Batman Superman's World's Finest, as writer Mark Waid and artist Clayton Henry plunge into the Phantom Zone to prevent an otherworldly horror from laying waste to Metropolis. And in the second story, Supergirl Universe End, Eisner Award winner and Zatanna bring down the House writer Mariko Tamaki and Scarlet Partridge take Supergirl to the farthest reaches of space in pursuit of a mysterious threat that only she can handle. This is a really fantastic creative team here on the next era of Action Comics. not only do we have, Superman aficionado Mark Waid headed back to the property, but also Clayton Henry has more than proved his finesse in terms of superhero comic books as well. The second story also features a creative team that we're really familiar with Mariko Tamaki and Skylar Partridge. So once again, just fantastic creators all across the board here. A lot to be excited about with what comic book creators DC's working with and the brand new properties that they have as well. Okay, I'm also interested to see what's going on over with the main Superman book. Let's read a little bit more about it over in the solicit. Superstar artist Dan Mora joins Joshua Williamson in a new story arc spinning out of Absolute Power. One of Superman's most lethal enemies returns as the Man of Steel and Superwoman Lois Lane deal with the return of a rampaging Doomsday. But how long will Lois's newfound powers last? And, as if Doomsday isn't trouble enough, another one of Superman's greatest enemies lurks in the shadows, the Time Trapper. Okay, for me, I think this is one of my favorite news stories that we've heard out of this announcement. The work that Joshua Williamson has been doing with the Superman property has been nothing short of exceptional. I think one of the most recent issues of the run where he was able to head back into the Wild West to really explore the relationship dynamics with Marilyn Moon Knight was so wonderful to see on the page. Joshua Williamson's Batman run was interrupted before it was finished, and I hope his Superman run will just be a really long and epic running title here. I think so much of the work that he's done with all the villains in Superman's life has been revolutionary and has really featured the title in some really interesting directions here. So very happy to see that Williamson is returning and really staying on this Superman title, and excited to see what Dan Mora is going to bring alongside his work as well. Okay, Wonder Woman 14, courtesy of Tom King and Daniel Sampere. It looks like they're still staying on this property, on this title here. The tide is turning in Wonder Woman's battle against the Sovereign as Steve Trevor takes matters into his own hands with deadly consequences. Steve's end could be the beginning of Diana's greatest adventure yet, motherhood. I haven't checked in with this title, I think, since the very first issue. I'm happy to see that Tom King is actually still moving forward with his arc involving the Sovereign, which was set up in the very first issue of this series here. I'm curious to hear if anybody else is reading it and if Wonder Woman has improved from the first installment. I may go back and check it out just because so much of the characters and the source material is really speaking to me here. Okay, I'm interested to see what's next over on Green Arrow. Somehow Green Arrow went from a new comic book series all the way to the milestone issue 350. This oversized anniversary issue features legacy numbering as writer Joshua Williamson closes out his acclaimed run on DC's Emerald Archer. Okay, if he's going to get an anniversary issue to close out his run, I will at least give him that. For me, Green Arrow is a series that I've experienced, I think the first 3 or 4 issues. Each one was so much fun. It was so fascinating to see all of these disparate characters under the Green Arrow banner really come together and emerge together on the page. I'm a little sad to see that Williamson's run is closing down so early in DC Comics, but hopefully he's going to be able to maybe step away and take on a couple less books in terms of DC Comics moving forward. I'm also still mourning the premature end of his Batman and Robin work that I've loved so much at DC. I really wish that Williamson was able to take charge of a Damian Wayne book and just run with it moving forward. Honestly, I wish his 2 works right now at DC was Superman and Damian Wayne as Robin. But I'll take anything we get from him. I feel like over the past couple years, Williamson has really cemented himself as one of the greatest living comic book creators over at DC. I'm going to be interested in checking out anything he reads moving forward. Okay, we have tons of just really beautiful variant covers. We have great new looks at Birds of Prey, Catwoman, Green Lantern, Nightwing, Poison Ivy, The Flash. I'm really happy that DC is still continuing to work on the Titans. Right now, I think the line is a little bit different than what we saw it in terms of Dark Crisis, and I really wish the publisher as a whole was putting forth more resources towards the Titans books and really trying to utilize this as DC's premier superhero team. But overall, I'm happy that at least some elements of that are still reflected in the line, and it still feels like these Titan characters are older than they were before and more important to continuity than before Dark Crisis happened here in the first place. Okay, so it looks like those are the end of some of our covers. I'm really happy with DC Comics line. I kind of fallen off some of the most recent issues, but maybe DC's All In initiative will bring me a little bit farther into what they have going on. For the meantime, though, it is time to switch back over to Marvel Comics. Right now, as we already touched on previously in our stream, I'm really impressed with the way that Marvel is positioning Venom as a science fiction based supernatural character. Sometimes people comment on the character of Black Widow and they mention that across some of the other Avengers characters, she isn't as interesting as the rest. Thankfully, though, I think Marvel Comics is lending some of the science fiction elements of Venom towards Black Widow to position her in a really interesting direction towards the rest of the ongoing Marvel Comics universe. Let's go ahead and see what Erica Schultz and Luciano Vecchio are bringing to Venom War Venomous. This one is coming in over from Marvel.com, published on July 17th. Next month, father and son duo Eddie and Dylan Brock go head to head and send the world of symbiotes into the chaos of Venom War. Black Widow, who bonded with her very own symbiote last year, will play an active role on the front lines in an all-new tie-in series, Venom War Venomous. Following up on the events of Black Widow Venomous, one-shot on sale later this month, Venom War Venomous will reunite writer Erica Schultz and artist Luciano Vecchio as they continue Natasha Romanoff's deadliest evolution yet. There is a lot to say about Venom War Venomous. First of all, it seems like Marvel Comics is changing the design of a Black Widow's Venom symbiote, and I'm really loving all the additional details like this pattern on Black Widow's hair. Also, it feels like her hair is a little bit longer than what we've seen before. There's more subtle elements of red kind of fighting against the black negative space of her costume too. So lots of like small individual elements adding up, I think, to a greater whole. Also, this is one hell of a creative team. Luciano Vecchio contributed so much epic work in closing out the Krakoan chapter of Marvel Comics. Erica Schultz has done just wonderful job fleshing out some of the recent female superheroes over at Marvel Comics. So for me, it feels like this is a super urban and a green creative team ready to take on the next era of Natasha Romanoff. Today, fans can see two new variant covers for Venom War Venomous. One by superstar cover artist Derek Chu. Oh, I didn't realize Derek Chu illustrated this. How cool. Plus, we have one from series artist Luciano Vecchio. Both covers spotlight Vecchio's updated design and showcase Natasha fully in tune with her new symbiote abilities. If you thought Black Widow was dangerous before, you haven't seen anything yet. Okay, I'm really loving this blurb. I was wondering if I was making up some of the additional elements of design in terms of Natasha's Black Widow outfit, but this article totally proves that Luciano Vecchio was the individual who added some of these individual elements towards Natasha. The venomous Black Widow. Black Widow and her newly trained symbiote are jumping into the Venom War and picking a side. Fresh off their new understanding from the Black Widow Venomous one-shot, Widow starts looking into horrific experiments Alchemax has been running based on the symbiote program. But she isn't the only one. Natasha's old roommate from her Secret Avengers days, Flash Thompson, now known as Agent Anti-Venom, is also on the case. Look at how much continuity Marvel Comics is already working with here. In their latest Carnage series, we've seen Flash Thompson take on the role of Anti-Venom and start hunting down the character of Carnage. I'm thinking here that maybe Natasha is going to be joining up with Flash over on his mission. The fact that we have these two characters together positioned, at this stage here, I think is super, super fascinating. I also really love some of the Toran Gronbeck issues of Venom, where she was able to introduce Black Widow as this symbiote character. Watching him work alongside Eddie Brock's son Dylan and their mysterious friend Bren was also a ton of fun here. I am really hoping that Marvel will continue to move the Black Widow franchise in this direction. I think we've been saying this here on the channel now for years. And I'm happy to see that Marvel is following suit, just like DC is over with these Titans characters, trying to be positioned as like the forefront of the DC universe here. I grow very attached to the characters I work with, so my current favorite is definitely Black Widow. Vecchio told AIPT in a recent interview. We get to revise and tweak her symbiote design, and I used the chance to link some of my favorite eras of her publishing history. Very, very cool. I always love it when artists take the Easter eggs of like previous runs or previous characters and implement them towards the latest design. I think it helps some of these newer designs feel a little bit more classic and essential to the character's publishing history. Let's see, and it's continuing the vibe of the last solo run by Kelly Thompson and Elena Casagrande, while linking it back to the classic Amazing Spider-Man 86, where John Romita Sr. introduced her iconic leather jumpsuit. The issue connected Black Widow to the Spidey mythos in a way that we don't usually think about, and now the symbiote aspect brings everything full circle thematically and visually. Man, I have done so much work hyping up Luciano Vecchio, and I don't think we've even shown his cover yet on Venom More Venomous. Here it is. Look at that. Look at how much detail is solidified in the background. In addition to just being like an epic cover with an interesting pose for the Black Widow version of Natasha, we also get all this symbolism in the background with all of these Black Widow spiders here. Plus the blue is contrasting really nicely with the black of Natasha's outfit and the red in her hair. This is a super dark cover too, and most of the background is just very dark, negative space. Really, really amazing work from Luciano Vecchio. Also really love the main cover here from Derek Chu. There is just so much to be excited about with the way that Marvel is positioning the Venom franchise, and I'm really hoping here that eventually the MCU takes suit as well. Afro SF, it's fantastic to have you over on our stream today. Hope you're doing well here. Afro SF says, greetings, Arakko Braddock. I have been silent up until now, but as a fan of the original 2099 books, I am delighted to see the early years of Alchemax and Spider-Man and now Black Widow. Indeed, I agree with you. This is another plot thread that I think the Venom series has been working with really, really well. I'm a little bit behind on some of the most recent issues, but I still think that Al Ewing really has an interesting new plot thread and design for this new era of Venom. And I'm also hoping this will influence other media, as I also said before. Just the idea of people taking, silly, like action-esque characters like Venom and positioning them towards a science fiction story is super, super fascinating. I'd also like to see Marvel maybe implement this approach towards Deadpool as well with a more serious storyline. Okay, fantastic stuff here over on Venom More Venomous. Let's see what else we're bringing to the forefront of Marvel's line. Okay, this is a super fast article coming in directly from Marvel.com. We actually have a interior schedule or a planning schedule over for San Diego Comic-Con. So these are some of the most important panels that I think Marvel's Publishing is going to be bringing next weekend to San Diego. The first one is on Friday, July 26th at 3 p.m. This one is going to be in room 60E, and it's Marvel Fanfare with C.B. Cebulski and Kevin Feige. Marvel Masters collide in an unprecedented meeting of page and screen. Join Marvel Comics editor-in-chief C.B. Cebulski and Marvel Studios president Kevin Feige as they discuss their mutual love for all things Marvel Comics, along with some special surprise creators. With decades of creative storytelling at the House of Ideas between them, there will be no shortage of creator insights and unheard comic book anecdotes that you don't want to miss. If that wasn't enough, following the discussion, fans will receive an exclusive giveaway comic. This panel is super interesting. I think right now Kevin Feige is in kind of a dark place considering the recent reception of so many Marvel Comics movies. Also, it's hard to find somebody who's really positive about CB Cebulski given his history as Akira Yoshida. There is a lot to see over at this Marvel panel. If anybody is at San Diego Comic-Con and has any feedback about how this panel went, I would love to know. This is super, super interesting. Okay, this next panel is actually going to be a lot more pivotal is the word I meant to say, towards the forefront of Marvel's publishing line. This is Marvel Comics' next big thing at 4:15 p.m. PST in room 6DE. This is it, true believers, the one you've been waiting for. Editor-in-Chief C.B. Cebulski, VP of Digital Media and Creative Strategy Ryan Penagos, and other Marvel guests are here for a glimpse into the future of your favorite heroes. The world-shaking ramifications emanating from Blood Hunt will last for years to come, and fans can look no further than this panel than an exclusive giveaway at the new status quo in the wake of Marvel's bloodiest event ever. Plus, attendees who stay until the end will receive an exclusive giveaway comic book. First off, I'm very happy that Blood Hunt is about to be in the wins of Marvel comic book events. I just don't think that Blood Hunt creatively achieved what I wanted to see it accomplish. Also, I don't quite think there was enough build-up across the Marvel Universe to really carry a storyline of that size. Plus, I think the way that Jed MacKay has been writing towards some of the shock value of these characters has also, I think, positioned Blood Hunt in a way that I don't really want to see reflected. Thankfully, though, it looks like that storyline will be behind us in just a few weeks as Marvel Comics starts to talk about what's next. I'm thinking right now that the next comic book event for Marvel could be really big, whether it's something really massive for the X-Men or whether it's something involving the Avengers. I should be really invested in each and every other comic book event. So for me, the very biggest panel of San Diego Comic-Con is happening on Saturday, July 27th at 3 p.m. PST in room 6A. Marvel Comics X-Men from the Ashes. I think it's no secret what I'm hoping Marvel announces. I'm really looking for some brand new comic books and maybe an event crossover. I'm not sure if it's too early right now. We don't even have the first issue of each of these individual comic books out yet, but I'm really curious to see what Marvel has in store for so many of the disparate villains like lingering across this brand new line of comics. Let's see who's going to be there. We have C.B. Cebulski, Tom Brevoort. We have Gail Simone from Uncanny X-Men, Colin Kelly and Jackson Lansing from NYX. It's going to be super cool to see them talk about their comic book just like a few days after it's released. Also super interested to hear what Mark Russell has to say about X Factor. I'm really interested to see like how some of his more humoristic writing is going to fit into the context of From the Ashes. We recently got Declan Shalvey's Mystique series. It's also going to be really interesting to see him positioned alongside his fellow creators for the From the Ashes title. For me, it looks like Mystique is a more ambitious comic book than some of the others too. So I think it's going to be really fascinating to hear what he has to say. Okay. Yeah, so those are some of my favorite upcoming panels over at San Diego Comic-Con. I'm hoping that we're going to have a lot to talk about here next week with new comic book series announced, new creative teams being refreshed and brand new ongoings. In the past, it's been so much fun to stream around San Diego Comic Con because every single time I refresh, the comic book news websites, they have brand new breaking news, new storylines, and brand new events as well. So we have a ton to look forward to this next upcoming week. I really hope we see at least one or two brand new news announcements that I have no idea that'll carry some of the hype and anticipation towards these next new installments. Okay, so a line of comic books that I think is really fascinating to explore alongside Marvel's mainstream is what's coming up next in terms of the Ultimate line. On July 15th, earlier this week, Marvel actually published brand new solicits behind upcoming Ultimate series. Let's go ahead and take a look at the new version of the Ultimate Hawkeye, the secret between the brand new Ultimate X-Men, and more. The Maker, a deranged alternate version of Reed Richards, manipulated his way through the time stream to create a world without superheroes, but when he emerges from captivity in 16 months, he's in for a rude awakening. So fascinating how this plot thread is playing out as the Maker's let's see if I can speak. As the Maker sleeps, so many of the characters within the Ultimate Universe are rising up and starting to plant the seeds of a counter-offensive against the Maker. In his absence, superhero nations and young mutants are reclaiming their destiny in 4 hit titles. Jonathan Hickman and Marco Cicchetto's Ultimate Spider-Man, Brian Hill and Stefano Caselli's Ultimate Black Panther, Peach Momoko's Ultimate X-Men, Dennis Camp and Juan Figueroa's Ultimates. Today, fans can peek at what's ahead to come in Marvel's bold new Ultimate line this October. The cover reveals and synopsises for October's issues tease the debut of the latest hero that the Ultimates seek to inspire, Hawkeye. A team-up between the unexpected but instantly iconic best friend duo of Uncle Ben and J. Jonah Jameson, Black Panther getting a mystical power-up thanks to the mysterious anti-vibranium in armor, Mace Storm, and their fellow mutants banding together to discover the origin and extent of their powers. All right, give me just one moment here, and we'll go ahead and get ready to check out some of these brand new solicits and covers for the upcoming Ultimate comic books. Okay, so first off, we have Ultimate Black Panther 9. This is a title that I haven't been following super closely, but the continuity I'm seeing on the 9th issue definitely has me intrigued as we have the Ultimate Killmongerer standing beside T'Challa himself. This one is still written by Brian Hill, and happy to see that the art and interior art is still illustrated by Stefano Caselli after all this time. By the way, it looks like these books are on sale here in October, so right around the corner. The Ultimate Sorcerer Supreme. Magic, mysticism, and metal clash, but the source of this magic is not what it appears to be. Due to the Maker's reshaping of the world, Black Panther wrestles with his new anti-vibranium and deals with the devastating consequences. What is the price of such life-bringing power, and what is the price of trying to master it? First of all, I'm interested to see if the Ultimate Sorcerer Supreme is going to be somebody aside from Stephen Strange. Also, a little bit interested by the new anti-vibranium technology that T'Challa seems to be working with is teased in the solicit as well. I'm hoping that the relationship between Killmonger and T'Challa gets a little bit deeper than what Marvel was able to implement in the MCU with some of the Black Panther films. I think it'd be really interesting if these characters were able to strike up a close, friendly relationship and maybe work together to help Wakanda. Now we have Ultimates 5. I've read the first 2 issues of this comic book. I know we haven't reviewed it up on the channel, but I think it's in a really fantastic direction. So much of the previous Ultimates comic book titles, I think, were marred by some of the really edgy direction that authors like Mark Millar implemented towards the book. I feel like Dennis Camp has done a great job drawing back that impulse and creating a story that's a little bit more relatable, to modern readers. I've seen this story told in so many different ways, but this new Ultimate series still has me interested. So I think that's a huge testament to what Dennis Camp and Juan Frigueri have brought to the comic book so far. I think a lot of the characterization with people like Hank Pym, Tony Stark has been a blast, and I'm really struck by how ambitious this book is. I feel like this is a great sister piece to Ultimate Invasion and actually has a lot of gusto that it's bringing that I really hoped it would as well. I would expect Jonathan Hickman to be writing this book out of all the Ultimate books over in the line right now, but I think Dennis Camp may actually be a better fit than Hickman for this series. Let's see what Camp and Frigueri are bringing over with Ultimate Hawkeye on the 5th issue of Marvel's ongoing Ultimates title. Ultimate Hawkeye targets Captain America. Hawkeye no more, not for long. A new challenger approaches when an unknown civilian picks up a discarded bow and arrow and refuses to let the Ultimates reclaim the stolen Stark tech. Captain America tries to settle the dispute, leading to an action-packed brawl of arrows versus shields. Meanwhile, the Ultimate Hellfire Club is up to something. In the middle of Fall of X, I was loving so much of what Marvel was doing with the Hellfire Club, and I wanted them to really bring up the ante and make the Hellfire Club more essential towards their continuity. I hope that the ultimate version of the Hellfire Club will bring a little bit more of a climactic sense to where the line is heading as a whole. I feel like that concept is so intriguing and a great fit for the more conspiracy elements that Jonathan Hickman first initially brought towards the Ultimate line in general here. We have a beautiful cover over from In-Hyuk Lee illustrating the new vision of Hawkeye. Another thing I want to say about this character is I'm very happy that he looks a lot different than Clint Barton. One thing that I really want all of these Ultimates books to really push on as we get deeper into the line here is differentiating themselves from what came before in previous Ultimate comics, as well as the current 616 continuity. I'd love for somebody besides Tony Stark to be Iron Man, somebody other than Steve Rogers to be Captain America. And I think this new design for Hawkeye is definitely leaning towards the direction I want to see this line go in. Afro SF says the Maker plot is very intriguing. It is great to see it happening in real time. Agreed. The DC 52 series was the last time we had a similar experience in comics. For me, I don't think some of the mysterious elements of Pandora behind the 52 were really played out in a way that captured the full potential of what those meta elements lent towards the line. Marvel is really trying to make good on the fact that this new universe is so intriguing because it's been built by the Maker, by having him be the focal villain for the line as a whole. Now, where I'm hoping Marvel is headed, and probably where the publishing line is actually gearing towards, is uniting all of these characters, Ultimate Spider-Man, the Ultimates, Ultimate X-Men, and positioning them towards the Maker and the Maker's Council. I feel like a lot of this article is kind of hinted at that as well. So I am hoping that Marvel will be able to fully realize the potential of Ultimate Invasion in the months to come with just a big epic event crossover with all of our Ultimates heroes battling the Maker. Let's talk about one of the fan favorite comic books in the Ultimate publishing line, especially because it restores the, I think, really big fan favorite relationship between Mary Jane and Peter Parker. This is Ultimate Spider-Man 10. So on this one, we have a cover from Marco Cicchetto, but the writing is from Jonathan Hickman, and the art is coming in from David Messina. David Messina is a wonderful, wonderful artist. I think he's just a great person to fill the roles of Marco Cicchetto for a month or two here. J. Jonah Jameson, Ben Parker, and Green Goblin collide. Fan favorite duo Ben Parker and JJJ take center stage in this investigative mystery issue. But In the world of shadows and secrets, every unturned rock leads to danger, and they'll soon have to decide which is the greater challenge, uncovering secrets or keeping them, featuring guest art by David Messina. For me, once again here, I really wish Jonathan Hickman would introduce some massive story element to get me really immersed in Ultimate Spider-Man. I like the idea of him pitting J. Jonah Jameson and Ben Parker together on the page, but I don't think that idea is really radical enough to get me invested in reading yet another Spider-Man ongoing series. Right now, I'm actually really happy where Marvel Comics' current Amazing Spider-Man series is headed. I'm so much more invested in the relationship between Norman Osborn and Peter Parker than I am in the relationship between like Peter Parker and Mary Jane that we have in Ultimate Spider-Man. So I'm still curious about this comic book. Jonathan Hickman is usually a more ambitious writer than what we've seen in some of these interiors. And I think, too, maybe watching this older version of Peter Parker team up with the very young characters of Ultimate X-Men could still be interesting. If anything happens in Ultimate Spider-Man, let me know, and I will be the first one to check it out. Right now, this is still not quite the comic book I'm looking for. But let me tell you here, my favorite comic book in the current Ultimate line is none other than Ultimate X-Men, both written and drawn by the tremendous Peach Momoko. I think this cover is so fascinating. It actually starts to detail and open up some of the plot elements that we were able to witness in the 5th issue of Ultimate X-Men, which we actually have a cover or a full video review for up on the channel here. First of all, let's start in the center by saying that the character of Hisako Ichiki Armor is starting to look a little bit older, and also the way that her armor abilities is manifesting behind her is very interesting to see on the page. Nico Minoru was able to manifest her powers in the previous issue. Also think it's super interesting to see her taking on a staff as well. The character of Surge previewed some of her darker background in the last issue and also cemented her relationship with the villainous Kageyama. We also have Mori and Natsu, who are teased as additional characters towards the story, and a really interesting visual depiction by Peach Momoko of the co-lead of Ultimate X-Men, Mei Igarashi, Maystorm. Her really effervescent personality has been such an interesting relationship dynamic over with Hisako towards the book. Also get a little preview of the mysterious shadow villain teased in this panel in the very bottom left corner, and the mysterious cult that they may or may not be a part of. So much interesting character work in Ultimate X-Men that I think is exemplified so beautifully here by this cover from Peach Momoko. For me, this is one of the most ambitious covers that we've gotten to date from Ultimate X-Men. Let's check out the solicit. Who are the children of the atom? What are mutants? Where do they come from? And how has the Maker's Council been keeping them under control? All these dark questions and more start to unravel as our heroes investigate a murder that for some reason the authorities keep covering up. And Shadow King advances his sinister plots. So for a long time, the ongoing X-Men series has referred to the mysterious villain in this book as the Shadow, and this Ultimate X-Men solicit is finally telling readers that it is indeed the Shadow King who is responsible for some of the misdeeds going on in the title. So I think it's really interesting that Momoko is able to progress the book so much and finally detail some of the big bads behind this opening story. Marvel's Ultimate line has been a mega success, demanding multiple printings, capturing the excitement of longtime fans, and providing exciting entry points for a new generation of readers. Don't miss out as they redefine Marvel storytelling as you know it. Check out October's main covers plus a variant cover for Ultimates 5 spotlighting Ultimate Hawkeye. Okay, I think there is just really tremendous work across the board here in Marvel's Ultimate line. There is so much to look forward to. I'm going to take a quick break, and we're going to be back in just a few moments to talk about the very next issue of Phoenix. Okay, welcome back to the stream here. We still have a ton of exciting brand new stuff. Let's go ahead and talk about the latest issue of Phoenix. The first issue of Marvel's brand new From the Ashes series just debuted this past Wednesday, as we got to see Jean really take advantage of her new lease on life here now that she's been resurrected in the Marvel Universe. We got writing in the book coming in from Stephanie Phillips, featuring artwork as well over from Alessandro Miraclo. Towards the end of the first issue, Marvel actually teased the inclusion of the villainous Black Order, who used to be affiliated with Thanos, as well as Marvel's father, who is a part of the Starjammers. So we have tons of continuity finally surfacing towards the end of Phoenix issue 1. Let's go ahead and see how Marvel is looking to cash these chips in with some of the interior pages with Phoenix issue 2. This was published actually yesterday here from Megan Demore over at Marvel.com. Phoenix 2 first look enlists Jean Grey's space pirate father-in-law. In a special first look at Phoenix 2, Jean Grey unexpectedly runs into Corsair, Scott Summers' Starjammer father, in the depths of space. In space, no one can escape their in-laws. At least that's the case for Jean Grey, who unexpectedly runs into her space pirate father-in-law Corsair in Phoenix 2 by Stephanie Phillips and Alessandro Miraclo. As Jean continues her mission to protect the cosmos as Phoenix, the Starjammer approaches her with the inside line on some huge news, and the fate of untold lives hangs in the balance. Phoenix may be the only one who can save them, that is, if she can believe he's telling the truth. One of the main villains that Stephanie Phillips set up in Phoenix is the character of Adani. I'm wondering if the Corsair already has word on the street about Adani, or if he's bringing some other elements of a conflict towards Jean in the second issue of Phoenix. A special first look at Phoenix 2 finds Jean returning on a ship, exhausted after a long day's work. In one page, she ignites as the Phoenix, only for Corsair to darken her doorstep. In another, a young girl named Adani buries her father as his killer Pericus, the powerful villain who escaped the prison that Jean saved from a black hole, looks on. A final page shows two Skrulls looking up to see Thanos' Black Order lording over them. For a light first issue that just really established Jean as a character, it looks like the second installment, the sophomore issue of Phoenix, has a ton more plot to bring with it. So this is the page that the preview was talking about, teasing Corsair, bringing some interesting news towards Jean. Of course, this series still features such beautiful covers from Yasmin Putri. This is a creator who also worked on with Tom Taylor on titles like Dark Knights of Steel. Super cool to see her bringing covers towards the brand new X-Men books. Here's a more casual page for Jean, where it looks like she's operating out of the spaceship that she currently uses as a base in the pages of Phoenix. It also starts to set up her relationship with Scott Summers, being kind of a long-distance one as well, with Scott based in Alaska. A really wonderful page from Alessandro Miracolo. Even with Jean Grey powered down, we're still getting beautiful panel bleeds, great uses of negative space, and just an interesting sense of motion across the page too. All right, we've talked about this Corsair page with Jean Grey so many times. Let's head over to the next one, featuring the character of Adani, who was one of our villains in the previous installment. Looks like we get to see her father, who was a priest of the Universal Church of Truth. Also, we get some elements of Pericus's costume in the background. I wonder if this is how Adani grew up to be like such a dark and villainous character, was due to some of her origins with Pericus here. Really interesting stuff teased in this issue of Phoenix. Okay, and this is one of the biggest plot elements for me too. We get the character, I believe this is Proxima Midnight, of Thanos' Black Order, standing here looking at some of these scrolls across the tail. Once again, so happy to see so much continuity in this brand new Phoenix book. Interested to see what elements the scrolls are going to bring over to the story and how Thanos' Black Order is playing into it. Another really interesting element about Phoenix is the way that Alessandro Miracolo is able to implement these character expressions in really relatable ways. I think the way that Proxima Midnight is looking at readers and some of these scroll characters takes some of the animosity away and just shows her reacting to what she's seeing, as opposed to being a scary and a villainous villain across the Marvel Universe as well. Really solid stuff here over on Phoenix. Let's take a quick glimpse over at Derek Chu's variant cover for the second issue of Phoenix, also coming in from Marvel.com. Really fantastic work here. I hope this book continues to establish its identity as we get deeper into From the Ashes, but I think a lot of this characterization is at least introduced to readers in the right direction. So in addition to there being a huge new Phoenix book in terms of Marvel's From the Ashes, the publisher also announced what the next era of Iron Man is going to look like. Now for me, this current brand new era of Iron Man is definitely a little bit bittersweet, because I think so much of what Jerry Duggan was able to accomplish in the last round of Iron Man, positioning that character with Emma Frost and the X-Men, definitely made the Krakoan era feel as epic as I think it should have been. Also, I feel like Jerry Duggan definitely could have gotten more mileage out of the Iron Man property if he was allowed to stick with it a little bit longer. But Marvel is ultimately in control of Iron Man, and we are entering a brand new era for Tony Stark, written by Spencer Ackerman, a Pulitzer Prize winning journalist, and featuring artwork by Julius Ota, who I also know I've really liked in the past too. Marvel's Iron Armored Avenger takes off for new adventures this October for a new era of Iron Man. The new hard hitting run will be written by the Pulitzer Prize winning journalist Spencer Ackerman. Okay, they're saying he also wrote Reign of Terror and DC's Waller vs. Wildstorm. I don't think that Waller vs. Wildstorm story was in continuity, but I did hear some good stuff about it. In his exciting Marvel debut, Ackerman will be joined by Julius Ota, who worked on Helverine and Alien. Following today's conclusion of Jerry Duggan's Invincible Iron Man, Tony Stark is back on top after regaining control of his company. He's determined to never hit rock bottom again, so when familiar threats like Roxxon and AIM resurface, they'll be met by an Iron Man more than willing to fight back, play dirty, and unleash every bit of his intellect to bring them down. When the best of his own technology fails him, Tony will build a brand new armor unlike anything he's ever seen in his 60-year history. Dubbed the Improvised Iron Man, fans will see it assembled throughout the series as Tony does what he does best, tinkering and upgrading it to counter anything the world throws at him. The series will also debut a new Ironmongerer, complete with a mysteriously powered new armor. Roxxon and AIM team up to take on Stark Unlimited, but they're ready for the old Stark. This one, he's a lot angrier than he used to be. Iron Man is going to war. New armor, old enemies, and unbelievable twists abound in this fresh take on a Fury-powered Iron Man. In some ways, I almost feel bad for this creative team that is headed on board Iron Man. For me, the idea of Tony Stark rendering yet another costume and trying to pick himself back up from the explosive storyline that left him and his finances really diminished. I just think it's a little bit sad that Marvel is moving forward with Tony Stark so soon. I mean, he just made a new costume recently, and it feels like in terms of the publishing, they're hitting the reset on this character almost once every year and a half. So for me, it's going to be really difficult for Spencer Ackerman to establish a storyline with Tony that's going to feel coherent, that plays off of the very last issue of Invincible Iron Man. I really think moving forward, Marvel should be a lot more careful about how often they choose to relaunch these books, because I do think it hurts the editorial direction at some point when we get these relaunches back to back to back. Winning a Pulitzer is cool and all, but it's not writing for Marvel Comics, Ackerman shared, and to write Iron Man is a very specific dream come true. A lot of comics' best creators have used Iron Man to tell stories about security and freedom, with a whole lot of superhero action, and of course, I can't wait to build on their legacy. On how his esteemed career in journalism prepared him to take on Tony Stark's specific complexities, Ackerman added, "In my day job reporting on national security, I've covered the real-life equivalents of the Stark Expo, watched experimental weapons in action, seen their impact on human beings, and tracked the massive wealth they generate for a select few. Tony struggles with challenges and is sure about to struggle with these challenges that I've covered for years. Only now can I write about them in the ways I've always wanted to in a superhero universe." I think this creative team definitely at least has a vision for the science fiction elements of Tony Stark as a character. I think Spencer Ackerman could really bring some really fascinating insight with some of his investigation into the tech world. I just wish it wasn't happening so soon in the wake of Marvel's Krakoan era and just the tremendous character-focused work that Jerry Duggan was implementing towards the book. Here is an amazing cover over from Sumit Kumar, who's just an amazing creator over at both Marvel and DC. Really happy to see him contributing more work towards the Iron Man property as well. Also, this is a super interesting costume for Tony that's much different than the last one that he was able to use. Tony's outfit was just created like just in time for Blood Hunt, and that storyline is barely winding down before Marvel is already getting ready to implement yet another Iron Man suit over for Tony. So this book is set to release on October 23rd, and we'll see if Marvel is able to develop the bones of a story in the wake of their decision to relaunch Iron Man so soon here. Okay, for our very last story over on the stream today, I want to explore the most recent X-Men Monday, detailing none other than NYX coming in from Colin Kelly and Jackson Lansing. This one is written by Chris Hassan, up on Adventures in Poor Taste. Colin Kelly and Jackson Lansing talk NYX. Welcome, X fans, to another uncanny edition of X-Men Monday at Adventures in Poor Taste. I'm truly happy for the Academy X fans. After 259 editions of X-Men Monday, you really get to know X fans and what they care about, or at least the X fans who read and submit questions to this column. And a good portion of them wanted more Academy X. Now, obviously, the Krakoan era was light on Academy X content. It's something former X-Men senior editor Jordan D. White talked about quite a bit in response to X-fans' pleas. In fact, in his final X-Men Monday appearance last month, Jordan said the following: "I know we didn't spotlight Academy X enough specifically. Honestly, I think it's one of those things that is cyclical in the sense that it's an era where the writers we were working with. But it wasn't just their era. None of them were big Academy X fans. But those folk will still be there. Those folk will come back." As you'll see in this interview, Academy X fans, your time has come. On sale July 2024, NYX1 by Colin Kelly and Jackson Lansing and Francesco Mortarito promises to bring Academy X characters and plot lines into the From the Ashes era. Because, as you'll soon read, Colin and Jackson are fans. Let's see what they have to say. I am not super familiar with Academy X. Let's go ahead and pull one of these covers just to take a look at it as well. So here's a cover over on the Academy X trade paperback. I'm going to read the solicit here to figure out which characters are in this book. I'm already seeing Noriko Ishida as Surge. This one is written by Nunzio D. Philippus and Christina Ware, coming in with a cover from Randy Green. So it looks like this trade has the first 15 issues of New X-Men, New X-Men Academy X Yearbook, and Hellions 1-4. The Xavier Institute students thought they had it tough when Professor X was running things. But now Cyclops and Emma Frost are in charge. As a new semester begins, the students adopt code names and costumes and are separated into training squads. In one squad, we have Danny Moonstar's New Mutants fighting themselves, feuding with Emma Frost's Hellions. But can the two teams work together to save Wither from himself? Then, something is haunting the halls of the Institute, and the students must get to the bottom of it. Prodigy tests his powers, a forbidden relationship is revealed, a teacher is mourned, and drama unfolds at the school dance. Can the New Mutants rediscover their shattered friendship, and what trouble will they get into on their summer vacation? Wow, this is a super interesting collection, mainly because the mutants featured on this series are so important to the X-Men's current publishing line, with heroes like Prodigy as well as Surge. Very happy to see Marvel finally embracing this next generation of mutant characters in a bigger and bolder way. Real quick, Spidey92 says, "Agreed, I'll reserve judgment for the new creative team for now, but I'm intrigued to see how the West Coast Avengers element ties into it that they've been teasing." Great feedback as well. Okay, Colin and Jackson, welcome to X-Men Monday. Well, you're no stranger to comics readers, and this is your first appearance in this column. I was wondering if each of you could share your first experience as an X-Men fan. So Jackson Lansing says, I had a fun rule that I've talked about whenever doing X-Men press. My mom loves it when I talk about it, so I'll talk about it again. My mom actually had a ban on watching the X-Men cartoon in my house. She didn't really know what it was, and I think she saw people shooting each other with big cable guns and was like, I can't allow it. So I wasn't allowed to engage with X-Men because I had very hippie parents for many, many years. Thankfully, my parents were not quite as concerned about the X-Men property. In fact, they even watched the X-Men movies with me together. So I am very blessed in this sense to not have those same kind of hippie parents that Jackson Lansing did. It wasn't until high school that I got back into comics after many, many years away. I went into a local comic shop and it was a really fortuitous week because it was a very similar age to right now. Marvel was launching 2 simultaneous X-Men series. It was Chris Claremont's Uncanny X-Men, where he was coming back. It was set at the school, and it opened with them playing baseball. It was the most classic Claremont X-Men stuff. And then there was Joss Whedon's Astonishing X-Men 1, so that was my first X-Men experience heading back into the X-Men line. I pretty much became a voracious X-reader after that and went back into Grant Morrison's New X-Men, which really became my first love in X-Men. And I had a very similar experience as well. I went back and checked out all these books after they were published and already collected, and I never did read that Chris Claremont volume, but I did check out both Grant Morrison's New X-Men and Joss Whedon's Astonishing X-Men. I think both of these titles are like really pivotal to me being an X-Men fan. Colin Kelly says, I was very much allowed to watch the X-Men show. My mom sat me in front of television and I would just watch it for hours and I loved it. Oh, by the way, this isn't Colin Kelly saying this. This is me saying this. I've never really watched and experienced the X-Men cartoon. And for me, it kind of holds me at a distance with X-Men 97 because I feel like the publishing line is just so far ahead of where all other media is. And I find myself just wanting to read X-Men directly from the source, in the field of comics, as opposed to tapping into other media. Colin Kelly says, I found Morrison's New X-Men run at my local library when I was a teenager. You give me that gross, weird stuff, and I was gobbling it up. And then, leaning into the same age Jackson mentioned, I think Joss's Astonishing X-Men run is one of the best onboarding experiences you can possibly have for X-Men. I agree with this to the point where I think like the first couple issues of Joss Whedon's X-Men are a little dull. It definitely comes together in like the later issues in the run and really shows like the full scope of what they're going for. Oh man, John Cassaday was just born to draw some of these X-Men characters too. AIPT says, it's funny. I was in kindergarten at the height of Turtle Mania in my band, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, because it's all we'd obsess over in class. Jackson says, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was one of the only of those that wasn't banned in my household. Turtles was my safe spot that I was allowed to watch. I guess it was because humans weren't hurting humans. It's all animals. When I hear these stories about parents who end up, banning these television shows for younger individuals, sometimes I almost think that these parents are like projecting some of their insecurities onto their children and maybe don't have that sense of imagination to where they could like picture like these mystical people having like all these like disparate abilities. I just think it's a little bit interesting to point that out. Okay, AIPT says, thank God for that loophole. Indeed, when NYX was announced, Marvel's press release mentioned YouTube bonded over series like Runaways, Young Avengers, and the original NYX. The X-Men line has had Here, let's see if I can talk. The X-Men line has had many fan-favorite series focused on the next generations of mutants. Beyond the original NYX, have any of them influenced how you're writing the From the Ashes series? Yeah, especially because these creators are taking on the younger NYX characters. They definitely have to have some inspiration from how other writers have launched their X titles. Colin says, Yes, absolutely. One of the X-Men eras that really caught me hook, line, and sinker was the Academy X era. We were all in the midst of Harry Potter mania, and the idea of separating people into little schools and houses was in the cultural imagination. You're taking these young X-Men and putting them under the banner of these classics. You're putting Cyclops in one of his first positions as a teacher and letting Emma Frost return to her roots as an educator. These were really exciting stories that allowed us to key into the youthful energy of just a bunch of kids playing baseball. One of the things Claremont really taught us is the idea that these X-Men are often best served as soap opera. Yes, we want to see Sentinels getting their heads blown off, but really, we're there to see which boy Jean Grey is going to kiss. I think that era was incredibly vibrant in terms of the young love and focus of these personal relationships. This is interesting to comment on. For me, I think these X-Men stories have to have a balance. They have to have these big, plot-focused stories to get me immersed into the narrative, but we also have to have the foundations of who these characters are. They do have to have these elements of romance that make them feel like fully realized and fleshed out characters, but I don't want those soap opera elements to take control of the entire story because I don't think that's the best way to serve the X-Men characters. Jackson says, obviously, we're carrying a lot of the characters or plot lines from Academy X forward in this new era. We're already playing with Laura and Anul. Okay, I wasn't sure if Laura was in Academy X. It's good to see Jackson clarify that for readers. You're going to see a lot of other characters come into the book over time that help us continue to evolve that era. I'm not seeing this in the article, so I quickly want to bring up the incredibly cool teaser I saw for NYX. Give me just a moment here. I love that, by the way. I type in NYX and our stream thumbnail comes up immediately. Way to go, YouTube search optimization. Yeah, I thought for sure that we would see this teaser at some point on this article and stream today, but we haven't yet. So here it is. This is a brand new teaser for NYX that was released, I believe, actually a couple weeks ago, teasing this new character of the Krakoan who has this mysterious ties back to the Krakoan age of Marvel Comics. For me, this idea came to mind because Jackson Lansing and Colin Kelly are working with so many of these characters with Academy X, but they're also referencing these elements of Krakoa with this mysterious new villain. So really feels like Kelly and Lansing have so much work ahead of them in this brand new book. And I'm so happy to see, as we mentioned earlier, so many elements of Krakoa still lingering in the Marvel Universe as we head into From the Ashes. I'm so happy to see Marvel is approaching these characters with a more long-term vision as opposed to just like a piecemeal kind of like hit and run story like what we see with so many of these other adaptations for the X-Men. It's really frustrating that like every time we see this property in film, it's just constantly rebooting itself again and again and again. And for me right now, the comics feel like a safe space where every single issue and every single comic book matters. Okay, so in addition to all these other elements, it looks like X Factor from Peter David and Ryan Sook is also an influence on this upcoming NYX series. Okay, let's see who's saying this as well. It looks like it's Jackson Lansing. Lansing says the only other one that I would point out really as an influence on the book was Peter David's Latter Day X Factor. The only one that played it like a noir in Mutant Town. It played with that idea of what it meant to be a minority population in a human city, have to look after your own, and have to deal with your disinterest in being a superhero and your interest in being either a public servant or just a private citizen who can get by day to day. The book was really great at taking characters like Strong Guy, who I found very unappealing or inaccessible, and made them people that I could really understand and access. I love both of these creators. I think Peter David has accomplished a lot of great work in terms of Marvel. Ryan Sook has blown my mind again and again with his artwork. This is an amazing cover. I love so much of the personality from Jamie Madrox, but I've just never checked out this X Factor run. Hopefully, that's one thing I'll get to eventually here, as I constantly hear creators I admire say such positive things about it. If anybody has read it in chat, let me know. So, a big goal for us in NYX is to take characters who sometimes get trapped behind their own iconography. Lore is definitely one of those, but I think Sophie Cuckoo is an incredible example of this because she's so fundamentally trapped behind the iconography that we understand. And especially, I think, in some ways, burdened by an enormous amount of iconography. I think that's what Iman Vellani in Sabir Perzada's whole run was about. Her trying to be like, all right, well, am I a mutant? Am I a human? Am I an inhuman? Am I a superhero? Am I an Avenger? Am I a champion? What am I? And I think really what our book says is you're Kamala Khan. Let's focus on that. Yes, so interesting to hear this creative team talk about how Iman Vellani and Sabir Perzada were trying to tell a story about identity as it came through to Miss Marvel. In the wake of the Hellfire Gala, it felt like Miss Marvel was taking her mutant ties to the X-Men incredibly seriously, and it sort of led to a collapse with some of her other roles in the Marvel Universe. Is she really important as an Inhuman, an Avenger, or a champion? I still think pitting Kamala towards the X-Men has definitely reinvigorated her towards the Marvel Universe. And while I know a lot of people are still really upset about her death, I really can't stress how fantastic it is to have her with some of these other really interesting characters like Prodigy. And I really hope that Colin Kelly and Jackson Lansing will write Miss Marvel so well that it will start to dispel some of the fears people have about her as an X-Men. That's sort of what we're doing across the board. It's not about Wolverine, it's about Laura. It's not about Prodigy, it's about David. And the way we're reflecting that is every issue of NYX is titled by the name of the character that it's about, not their mutant name, their human name. Because that's the world we're living in right now, and the world they have to start understanding how to operate inside. I love that. I love the fact that Kelly and Lansing are taking these characters really seriously, and I would expect nothing else from them because they were really able to tap into the characterization of Steve Rogers in their Sentinel of Liberty series. And that really isn't easy to do with a character as iconic as Steve. Let's dig into your ensemble cast a bit further. X-fan Harry G was wondering how you chose your ensemble. Colin Kelly says, one of the first ways we approached this was looking at first and foremost, what characters did we love? If you only get a chance to write X-Men, you should write the things that you love and care about. And for us, that meant going deep and pulling not only necessarily on the classics, but finding characters who exist in the corners who haven't had their full stories told. A character like Anole, who I've always loved since he was just a little green lad going up through the journey of not only discovering how to be a lizard man, but how to be queer within that space, is an incredible story. Yes, he's been trapped behind a bar, but how does that mean now that he's forced to get out of it? That's a rich story that we feel deserves to be told. I'm really happy that we are checking out this article. I am not very familiar with Anole, and getting to know the fact that he's actually been a bartender for quite a bit of time here definitely fleshes out some interesting aspects of his character. This is such a beautiful panel from Francesco Mortarino as well, showing Sophie Cuckoo approach him, maybe with Kamala at the bar that he's currently working at. Jackson Lansing says, I think the other thing we're really eager to do is take this unique period in Kamala Khan's story, which benefited from the whole Krakoan resurrection plotline. We were in the room when all that was being discussed and decided, really never thinking that it would be our job to come in and explore what that meant. But Here it is. And I think we've already discovered that it's a really wonderful thread because it's turned Kamala into the Kitty Pryde of this era. She's a character who gets to learn what it is to be a mutant piece by piece, moment by moment. I think this is something that we've already explored and said before. I actually went back and read some of the first couple of issues of Chris Claremont's X-Men run, and I stopped reading right when Kitty Pryde was introduced. And for me, Kamala Khan is such an interesting window into the X-Men as written by Jerry Duggan in that most recent Hellfire Gala issue. And watching Kelly and Lansing talk about Kamala like she's the new version of Kitty Pryde really hints to me that they understand the foundations and role that this character has into the current Marvel universe. Right? The X-Men are currently really hard to get into and to get invested in because of so much of their continuity. Even though we're restarting from zero from the X-Men right now, every single book has ties to Krakoa. So thanks to Kamala Khan, I think this new era of From the Ashes is going to be a lot more readable to newer readers. Unlike Kitty, she's somebody who does understand what it means to be a superhero. So it's been really fun to be like, okay, she's an active superhero from the get-go, but she doesn't have to ask anybody for permission. She doesn't have to ask how to be an X-Man. She's Miss Marvel, she's an Avenger, she's fine. How do we deal with that when it means for her life to change now that she's a mutant? Not just in the public perception of Miss Marvel, which is, I think, something Seabar and Iman have to deal with a lot, but also what she owes in her community. Not just what she owes to herself, but what she owes to all the rest of the mutants or what she doesn't. I think it's going to be a big book about the conversation as the book progresses because we're really looking to make a book about continuity so Kamala becomes a really hardcore part of all that. Then the other characters really come out of a natural desire to surround those stories with characters who could forward their story and had their own stories to tell. Sophie became a really obvious number to Kamala just in terms of making sure there was a character who represented everything Kamala wasn't. Somebody who was really embedded in mutant culture, who was defined by it, who was barely a civilian identity, and certainly doesn't have an individualistic identity, somebody who really has to learn what it's like from the start. Yeah, and it was super fascinating to see Sophie already establish a relationship with Miss Marvel in just some of the very first pages of NYX. I feel like Kelly and Lansing have already made good on that promise within just those first few pages. Okay, Prodigy, who's a character we're longtime fans of, obviously a huge part of Academy X and a huge part of the future of the X-Men to the degree that he had been named a member of the X-Men outright before they were all murdered. And we thought it was a really important moment to say, okay, Prodigy went through this whole journey. He's become the Cyclops that he always wanted to be, and it didn't work. What's next? How do you step back away from the dream and back into some kind of life? What do you become in the absence of your dream? Colin Kelly says, I think that kind of landed us easily on Laura as the kind of final member of this cast. She's someone who is, as we meet her at the start of this, very specifically says, I'm only Wolverine. If Sophie is our bright light, standing to blind everybody, and Kamala is this kind of honest truth, trying to find her way. When Laura knows exactly who she is, or at least who she thinks she is. She's living on a knife edge. She's living by the blade in her journey of discovery, what the humanity is, what lives underneath the mask. If there is still anyone underneath the mask, is once again going to be a good journey for her, but also an important reflection as all of these characters are dealing with their own identities and what it means to be in this post-Krakoa world. For a long time, the X-Men had this home that they were able to go back to with Krakoa. And now that Krakoa is gone, it feels like the stakes are more higher for the X-Men than they ever have been before. You mentioned Sophie. X-fans Brett Smith, Esme Gray, and Mario B. wanted to know What inspired you to choose Sophie of all the cuckoos? Yeah, that was also one of my questions too. What is it about Sophie that makes her essential to the cast of NYX as opposed to some of her sisters like Esme? Jackson says, in part, there's been some indications over time that of them, she's the one who has the most interest in being a hero or in being superheroic. In general, I think that's really interesting because we were going to be putting her in a relationship with Kamala, and they were both going to be learning stuff from one another. This is very much about their friendship kicking off and Sophie kind of understanding why Kamala is cool and Kamala understanding why Sophie's cool and the two of them finding some kind of home within each other. I feel like Sophie fit best. Of all the cuckoos, she felt like the one with the least inherent darkness. She felt like the one who least needed to stay and be a leader among them. She felt like she was kind of ready to take a step out and look beyond that. Once again, I am really happy. Okay, first of all, Side Quest Cat, very funny coming in here with the Kamala Harris meme. But I do want to take a step back and say here that of all the cuckoos, super fascinating to pick Sophie as the leader and to have so much established background as well and have a reason why you're ultimately picking Sophie as opposed to Esme or the rest of the X-Men characters. You know, having Sophie as a character who's really trying to live up to her own aspirations and become a superhero is a super, I think, dynamic way to stretch out and explore the property. And as anybody who reads NYX #1 will know, we're not leaving all the other cuckoos on the side of the road. We're using the whole thing, but we're really focusing on Sophie and what Sophie is doing. Yeah, very cool that Kelly and Lansing may be working with some of the other cuckoos. Due to the fact that we already have Sophie in that book, I could definitely see an expansion of the property with the rest of those characters. Even though Emma Frost is currently an exceptional X-Men, I would love to see her back in the pages of NYX at some point. You mentioned kissing earlier. X-Fan Emily asked if we can expect to see new or established romances in NYX. Emily is particularly hopeful to see more of David and Tommy together. Yeah, this isn't the first NYX installment either. Let's see what ties are lingering back to the original and new versions of NYX. Jackson says, I want to apologize in advance. David and Tommy are no longer together. David has a new boyfriend. You will meet him in NYX 1. In part because what we're doing with David is, especially at the beginning of his journey, very much about him separating himself from X-Men and Krakoa. In general, and trying to look for a more objective and more humanistic perspective. People understand what that means, ideally, by the end of the first issue. Colin says it was a very amicable breakup. They were going in separate directions, with Jackson clarifying that Tommy was going very fast in the other direction. There will definitely be new romances to be had. There are a couple of new love interests for Laura that we're looking at, playing out over the course of a little while. We've got sort of a building love triangle that's going to establish around her. We've got regular romance for Anol. His dating life is something we're really interested in. Okay, apparently Anol has a Grindr account, according to Colin Kelly. Let's get more information on this really pressing breaking news story here. Colin says his Grindr account is so weird, man. There are so many weirdos in that thing, but luckily, some people who actually can start to understand him. We want all these characters to find love, but as writers, we are going to make it as difficult as possible. I'm telling you, Colin Kelly, you better take special care with our boy Anol here. AIPT finally asked the question about the mysterious Krakoan character that we also previewed earlier in the stream here. Let's see what they have to say. This mystery Krakoan, X-Fan Cavalry was wondering what we should expect from this new character. A bit harsh, but man, that is such a hard thing to pronounce. The X-Fan asked if they're just a poor man's version of Magneto or something else entirely. Jackson says, that's good. That's what you should say. That's what you should be wondering. That's the objective. No comment. All right, let's give a little bit more speculation in terms of who this character could be. For my money, one individual who's definitely coming to mind is Joseph, the clone of Magneto, who's recently sprung up in the Scarlet Witch series and Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch titles. I'm wondering if it could be him. I feel like this is definitely a sense of misdirection, as we recently saw Magneto surface in Jed McKay's ongoing X-Men book. I doubt that he would be in the pages of this brand new NYX series, but I'd still be interested in checking it out either way. Okay, cool. We have more of an answer from Jackson Lansing about the Krakoan character. He says, after NYX1, I think we'll have plenty of stuff to say about the Krakoan. As it stands, I think it's best to encounter him the way he's encountered in the book. Suffice it to say, the Krakoan is a character who is not there to be a sort of stock X-villain. He's not the new Magneto if you want to think about it that way. Our heroes and villains are ideally going to be approached whenever possible with empathy. First, with an understanding they're not out here trying to be evil. They're out here trying to live a life, and they're trying to find a new way to identify in the aftermath of Krakoa. Some people are going to make good decisions, and some people are going to make bad decisions. And those decisions are going to reflect each other. The Krakoan is maybe just one of our most germane thread for the exact idea that it's going to thread not just going to the first arc of NYX, but beyond it. Another, I think, really strong contender for the identity of the mysterious Krakoan is definitely the Hydra Captain America that resurfaced in the wake of Fall of X as well. Colin Kelly says, there are a lot of fans out there who understand how angry losing Krakoa might make you. And the Krakoan is very much a mouthpiece, a representative of all of these perspectives. It hurts when you lose something you love. It hurts real bad. Beyond the Krakoan, can we expect any other adversaries in NYX? I'm curious to know too, frankly. Jackson says, within the pages of NYX 1 and 2, you meet 2 legacy villains. 3 legacy villains, kind of, and a new sort of Han Solo-esque between good and bad character. That's a mutant you're going to encounter in NYX 2 named Local. Local's a really exciting new addition to the squad who's bringing out a whole different sort of angle on Laura and a couple of different characters and acts as a gateway into an exciting, I think, new take on a legacy villain. And if people want to meet him early, every one of these X-Men books has a QR code in the back where you can at least unlock a last 31st page. I also want to take a step back here and say the QR codes on all of these X-Men books have been fantastic so far. The page on X-Men 1 introducing these like mysterious shadowy characters with 3K was super cool. I love the Adani tease in Phoenix 2 and getting to know the mysterious origins behind that character. The fact that we're getting some brand new teases about the mysterious Local for the barcode in NYX1 also should be a ton of fun moving forward. Beyond the Krakoan, we have Anole continuing to be a bartender in Prodigy teaching students about mutant culture. NYX seems like a must-buy for fans of the first Krakoan age. Is it safe to assume you two are regular readers and fans of the era? Indeed, were you watching my videos? Do you know about what happened in Krakoa? Let's see what Kelly and Lansing have to say. Jackson says, oh, I mean, it brought me back to the X-Men. I had been gone for a little bit as a reader, you know, from high school forward. I've been reading a lot of X-Men over a long period of time, and I've stopped at any signpost along the way and caught some of it. Krakoa kept me in the whole time, those Dawn of X trades that published it all in sequence. I was buying those even though I had the single issues. Colin and I were genuinely banging on the door of that office in our early days at Marvel, and it was too late. At that point, they had everybody they needed, but we desperately wanted to be involved in it because it was such a unique and exciting narrative space. And just as storytellers, we owe so much to Jonathan Hickman, the way he tells stories, the way he graphs things, the data pages. We went and jacked those for Star Trek. We just took those over to Star Trek because they're so good. Yeah, I'm happy to see that they have so much influence from Krakoa. And also, they probably were such big fans of Krakoa that they wanted to sneak it back into their book with NYX. This is exactly what I want to hear from these creators. Colin says it was an incredible age with incredibly intriguing and great ways that evolved the X-Men in some really, really important ways. While we absolutely will not say this era is required reading, it is incredibly important for us to acknowledge about what has come before and the impact that Krakoa had on the mutant population. We're one of the few books that's designed in some ways to answer that era rather than push past it directly, and that comes from our initial pitch. I think a lot of X fans hear from the ashes and assume new stuff, and it is. NYX is filled with new stuff. But on the flip side of that, it felt really important that especially for this new book that was supposed to be very street level and very grounded about how we move on and about how we push things and about how we adapt from what was that thing. What did it mean? How did it live on Krakoa? How did it not live on Krakoa? What is the language used? Where is it not used? And what was it like for people who are all on Krakoa? What was it like for people who weren't on Krakoa? That's a question that Jed MacKay asked of Chief Paula Robbins of Beast in the first issue of X-Men. All these stories felt really interesting and continue to flow from the Krakoan era. Yeah, this was a page from one of the final Krakoan comic books. The Krakoan era is not done in that particular context unless we are talking about it. And I think it is a piece of history, the same way that Age of Apocalypse or the Dark Phoenix saga can basically live forever in the X-Men imagination. Okay, let's see if we can go ahead and wrap this article up here. All right. Well, it seems like you have some things to sort through on your end, so this is a good note to end on. This is the cover for NYX issue 4, teasing the mysterious Krakoan. Oh, we also have the solicit. Let's check out the solicit as well. Genius, student, mutant, young Avenger, and X-Men. As Prodigy, David Allen has been all these things and more. But now he faces his most difficult challenge yet, facing down his past and looking his present in the eye. Prodigy must fight to understand what mutant culture really means to those left behind on Krakoa, and how far he'll go to protect the mutants of New York City from a devastating and dangerous conspiracy of their own. Also, we're getting artwork from Enid Balam on this first issue. I've seen Enid Balam's art before, but I can't quite picture what book it came from. Suffice to say, I think we should be in good hands for NYX 4. Also, the idea of Prodigy really stepping up here amongst the rest of the cast is very exciting too. We already got a chance to preview some of Francesco Mortarino's beautiful art on NYX. And I think at this point, I am just frothing at the mouth for the first issue. Also, extending beyond the issue of NYX coming next week, we are getting X-Force in the very, very near future. I've already said this before, but this is such an enthralling book for me. It's going to be so much fun to see Betsy Braddock and Escani continue their relationship. We also have some fallout from the last era of X-Force that ended in a very dark realization of Beast. Plus, we have Forge. And I'm interested to see what elements that guest star Deadpool is going to bring in for the first issue. Finally, we shouldn't leave without talking about Noriko Ishida. Very excited to see Surge taking on a bigger role in the X-Men for the From the Ashes era in the wake of X-Force issue 1. All right, so that is going to do it for our stream today. I want to thank you guys so much for the support. Next week is going to be so much fun. I'm so excited to see what Marvel Comics is going to bring to the X-Men property and what announcements they have for the rest of the line. We will definitely be streaming on Saturday, and I'm going to try and sneak in an additional stream depending on how much news we have on Friday. Probably most definitely Sunday we'll have something too. Thank you one last time for coming to check out our stream, and we'll be back really soon to chart the next adventures of the Marvel Universe. Thanks so much, and I'll see you soon. Bye.